Imagine, if you will, the world's most powerful military alliance losing its sight in a single instant. No warning, no explosion, no trace. This morning, NATO's entire satellite network over Eastern Europe winked out, gone, as if a cosmic hand simply turned off the lights. The system that took generations to build, with investments soaring into the hundreds of billions of dollars, vanished into silence. Decades of vigilance, of technological advancement, erased in the space of a breath. No alarm bells rang, no sirens wailed. Instead, only an eerie stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Throughout the borderlands, strange auroras shimmered across the sky. Witnesses described ghostly blue and green lights, flickering in unnatural patterns, casting long and unfamiliar shadows on the ground. Some even said the air buzzed with static, leaving hair standing on end. For a few minutes, the very laws of physics seemed to bend. Pilots flying over Poland and Romania reported sudden instrument failures, compasses spinning wildly, navigation screens flickering and dying. Truck drivers found themselves unable to plot courses, their GPS units displaying only empty maps. And yet, from every official source, there was nothing but silence. No explanations, no reassurances. Just the endless churn of rumor and fear. Almost immediately, global markets convulsed. The New York Stock Exchange opened to a sea of red, with shares of companies like Microsoft, Google, and Airbus plummeting. Oil and gas prices soared, as energy traders braced for the possibility of supply routes being cut off. Airlines grounded flights across half of Europe, unable to trust their navigation systems. Massive container ships, worth hundreds of millions of dollars each, drifted aimlessly, their digital maps now dark. The entire Western world's economic machinery ground to a halt, revealing just how much depended on the invisible web of satellites above. The shield that was meant to guarantee safety had evaporated. The sense of security, the belief in technological supremacy, shattered like glass. If an unseen force can blind an entire alliance in seconds, what else might it do? Could it freeze bank accounts, shut down electric grids, or even paralyze entire cities? The imagination runs wild. In the past, science fiction warned of such invisible wars. Now, the nightmare is real. Why strike now? And who wields such awesome power? Today, the last illusion of technological invulnerability is gone. The invisible war in space has left governments, corporations, and ordinary citizens exposed in ways never previously imagined. Suddenly, the world is forced to confront its own fragility. With nothing certain, one question echoes in every corridor of power and every living room. What comes next? To grasp the scale of this event, we must retrace the final hours before the blackout. Were there signs? Did anyone see the storm coming? For decades, satellites formed the backbone of Western power. Consider the Gulf War, when American GPS-guided bombs struck with surgical precision, or the surveillance satellites that mapped troop movements during the Kosovo conflict. NATO's satellites were not just eyes in the sky. They were the nervous system of Western strategy. They allowed generals to coordinate airstrikes from Nevada to Afghanistan, to track ships moving through the Black Sea, and to respond to disasters anywhere on the globe. No other alliance possessed such a vast, interconnected network. Building this system took more than 50 years. The first satellites launched in the 1960s were little more than radio beacons. By the 1980s, America's Defense Support Program watched for missile launches day and night. By the 21st century, the architecture was vast. Thousands of satellites relayed signals, images, and encrypted messages between continents. Each satellite cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The total investment easily exceeded $1 trillion. And yet, for all its complexity, the system's greatest weakness was its invisibility. Like the Titanic, it was thought unsinkable until reality struck. Every troop movement, every fuel convoy, every split-second battlefield decision depended on those satellites. During the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, soldiers relied on satellite navigation to avoid roadside bombs. Drones circled high above, streaming live video to analysts in Europe and America. Humanitarian missions, too, used this network. After the Haiti earthquake, satellite imagery guided rescue teams through the rubble. The entire Western doctrine assumed that space was safe, that its technology was untouchable, and that this edge would last forever. But space technology did not only serve the military. It powered banking, air travel, emergency services, and even the way you check the weather on your phone. Every ATM withdrawal, every online purchase, every Uber ride depended on the precise timing and location information only satellites could provide. When these satellites failed, the shockwaves extended far beyond generals and presidents. The very rhythm of daily life was thrown into chaos. Imagine waking up to find your bank account inaccessible, your phone's map useless, and your city's emergency services paralyzed. That is the world millions faced this morning. Now, losing that edge threatens not just the ability to fight wars, but the very confidence that underpins the digital world. Overnight, the assumption of Western supremacy has been exposed as dangerously brittle. The foundation of modern life, built on the silent, invisible signals from space, has proven to be a single point of catastrophic failure. What happens when that foundation vanishes without warning? At dawn, the unimaginable struck. NATO's eyes in the sky went dark over Eastern Europe. In moments, chaos rippled through every system built on their protection. Air traffic controllers lost contact with dozens of planes. Shipping companies reported that entire fleets were suddenly untrackable. Banking networks experienced mysterious outages. Stockbrokers, accustomed to instant trades, found systems lagging by minutes or even hours. The impossible had happened. NATO's all-seeing satellites were blinded in an instant, leaving the West adrift in confusion and dread. For many, it evoked the shock of September the 11th, when the unthinkable became real. But this time, there were no visible attackers, only the consequences of a silent, invisible strike. Along the volatile frontiers, eyewitnesses described strange, rippling lights in the sky, unfamiliar phenomena that danced overhead just before every single GPS signal disappeared and all satellite communications fell silent. Commercial airliners circled helplessly, unable to plot safe routes. Massive container ships floated, immobilized, their digital maps now blank screens. The world's most advanced surveillance network, painstakingly assembled over decades at the cost of hundreds of billions of dollars, was reduced to silent wreckage, spinning uselessly above the earth. Panic seized global markets. Within mere hours, shares of technology titans plummeted, erasing fortunes. Energy prices soared as traders braced for supply chaos. For the first time in living memory, the arteries of global trade, air travel, shipping, logistics, simply froze. The West's technological core, once seen as invulnerable, revealed itself as a single, catastrophic point of failure. Inside NATO headquarters, emergency sessions stretched through the night. Yet all the urgent calls and confidential briefings yielded only discord. Some Western leaders demanded immediate, overwhelming retaliation, convinced this was a deliberate attack. Others, fearing the spiral of escalation, pleaded for restraint and thorough investigation. Old alliances strained as suspicion and frustration grew between member states. The myth of unbreakable unity had shattered by noon. Meanwhile, Moscow exuded calm assurance. Russia's official statements were measured but unmistakable, offering dialogue, on new terms that promised to rewrite the post-Cold War order. Western diplomats hesitated, unable to agree if this was an overt threat or a backhanded invitation to redraw the world's rules. Throughout think tanks and newsrooms, experts scrambled for answers. Some blamed exotic electronic warfare, speculating about quantum jammers beyond Western reach. Others whispered of betrayal from within NATO itself, or even floated the wild theory of extraterrestrial interference. The deeper the uncertainty, the greater the paralysis. It felt as though reality's rules had shifted overnight. The West's inability to respond decisively was not lost on its rivals or its own people. The cornerstone of Western security, strategic unity, now looked alarmingly brittle. The invisible order that held up daily life, markets, and politics began to fray at the edges. This blackout was not just a technical crisis, it was a rupture at the heart of global power. The world held its breath, knowing history would be shaped by what followed. Yet as leaders scrambled and adversaries watched, a new and even more urgent crisis began to unfold. The blackout was only the beginning. If our satellites are vulnerable, then nothing digital is safe. Welcome to the era of invisible war. Space was once a sanctuary, a silent domain where satellites drifted untouched above Earth's conflicts. That illusion is gone. The sudden blackout over Eastern Europe has exposed space as a contested war zone, where the first attack can arrive without warning, without trace, and with devastating effect. Attacks in orbit now leave no explosions or debris, just the instant vanishing of data, communications, and navigation. It is chilling. A silent code or energy pulse can cripple entire nations without a single missile launched. This moment shakes the pillars of global security. NATO's Article 5, the pledge that an attack on one is an attack on all, faces a challenge no leader predicted. What does collective defense mean if an enemy can simply blind you from hundreds of kilometers above without leaving any evidence? European leaders are racing to respond. If critical systems can be taken offline in seconds, can Europe trust foreign infrastructure? Urgency grows to build homegrown, independent satellite networks and security systems, free from American control. But such a transformation will take years, while the threat is immediate and relentless. These dangers reach far beyond the military. Economy, government, and daily life all depend on satellites. When they fail, markets panic, energy costs surge, supply chains falter, and even basic apps can go dark. The risk is not just to soldiers, but to every business, every person, every moment. The blackout has triggered a new arms race in space. Nations scramble to develop anti-satellite weapons, jammers, and invisible hacking tools. The old rules, mutual assured destruction, visible troop buildup, no longer apply. Today, the greatest weapon is unseen, unpredictable, and nearly impossible to prove. Allies and rivals are forced to rethink doctrines, defenses, and assumptions that once felt unbreakable. The global order has rarely been this unstable. If space is at risk, then so is everything connected to it. Security, wealth, even our sense of normalcy. How do you adapt when the rules of power have changed overnight? Historical precedent offers some guidance, though never on this scale. During the Second World War, the Allies relied on radio communications, which were frequently jammed or intercepted. Codebreakers in Bletchley Park worked around the clock to outpace German encryption. The lesson: technological advantage can vanish in a moment, forcing entire societies to adapt or perish. In the 1970s, the United States and Soviet Union played a dangerous game of satellite cat and mouse, testing anti-satellite missiles over the Pacific. But those skirmishes were visible, their effects limited. Today, the enemy is invisible. An algorithm, a pulse of energy, a single line of code. The scramble for answers has already begun. European governments have convened emergency technology summits, inviting experts in quantum encryption, radio astronomy, and artificial intelligence to brainstorm defenses. NATO has launched investigations, dispatching teams to ground stations from Norway to Bulgaria. In Washington, Congress demands accountability, while tech CEOs hold crisis meetings behind closed doors. The pressure to develop new satellites, smaller, more decentralized, harder to target, is immense. Companies like SpaceX and OneWeb are suddenly at the center of geopolitics. But satellite launches take months, even years. In the meantime, the world must cope with uncertainty. Survival now hangs by a thread. Can you function if the digital sky abruptly goes dark? Imagine hospitals without access to patient databases or remote surgery. Imagine police and fire departments unable to coordinate responses to emergencies. Imagine entire cities plunged into darkness, not by bombs, but by the loss of the signals that synchronize power grids. The consequences are not hypothetical. In 2017, a simple software glitch knocked out airline check-in systems across Europe for a day, causing chaos. Multiply that by 1,000, and you glimpse the fallout from today's blackout. This blackout is far more than a military defeat. It is a jolt, shaking everyone awake. In a world where satellites and global networks form the nervous system of daily life, their sudden loss exposes the alarming fragility of modern civilization. The message is unavoidable. Old certainties about technological safety and dominance have evaporated. Redundancy is not optional, but vital. Depending on a single technology for navigation, timing, or communication is reckless. Both governments and industries must now invest in alternatives: terrestrial radio, ground-based navigation, even analog backups. If satellites vanish, society must not collapse. There is another front: cyber and electronic warfare. The weapons that blinded NATO's satellites were invisible and silent, yet devastating. Security must evolve, not only with stronger firewalls or encryption, but by anticipating threats beyond today's imagination. Public and private sectors need to pour resources into detection, resilience, and rapid response before the next attack arrives unseen. Our supply chains and communication networks must be designed for resilience. Decentralized systems are essential. If satellites fail, data and goods must still move, whether by fiber optics, mesh networks, or even human couriers. Organizations that build flexibility into logistics and communications will survive storms that flatten the unprepared. Globally, the rules have changed. International security agreements built for a physical world now lag dangerously behind the digital and orbital reality. Nations must forge new treaties and joint protections for space and cyberspace, or face unchecked escalation. Without a new framework, chaos may follow. Awareness is the responsibility of all, from world leaders to first responders, from CEOs to ordinary people. Everyone must grasp how exposed our systems truly are. Drills, education, and contingency plans are no longer luxuries, but necessities. Only by understanding these stakes can we demand and drive the urgent changes required for survival. The penalty for failing to adapt is staggering: economic freefall, shattered security, and the loss of global influence. The blackout in the West is not a one-off. It is a warning shot for the entire world. Survival now demands urgent transformation from governments, industries, and citizens alike. But how did this unprecedented blackout begin? To understand, we must look back to the first ominous signs, when the satellites started to go dark. The moment began quietly. A radar operator in Lithuania noticed a sudden drop in satellite signals. Minutes later, a civilian airliner over Ukraine lost contact with ground control. In a Warsaw bank, a server room technician saw the timestamps on transactions freeze, then jump backward by several seconds. At first, no one connected these dots. They were dismissed as technical glitches, isolated and unremarkable. But then the reports multiplied. By the time NATO's command center realized the scale of the failure, the blackout was complete. This is the nature of invisible war. It does not announce itself with explosions, but with small, accumulating failures. The enemy is not at the gates. It is already inside the system. The techniques used to blind NATO remain a mystery. Some experts blame directed energy weapons, others point to quantum interference, and a few suggest the use of advanced artificial intelligence to manipulate the satellite's own software. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. The world's most powerful alliance has been left blind and vulnerable. Your story is now linked to a worldwide crisis. How has this blackout shifted your reality? The sudden blackout of NATO's satellites has sent shockwaves rippling far outside military boundaries. If you are in a city suddenly stranded without navigation, a business owner bracing for economic upheaval, or simply someone watching leaders scramble for answers, what you experience matters now more than ever. This is not just another headline. It is a moment that shatters the illusion of stability and security. Have you noticed disruptions in daily life? Lost signals, confused routes, or anxious communities? Do you have a unique perspective on what is unfolding? Share your observations below, Every detail helps us chart the true depth and reach of this unprecedented event. By speaking up, you are not just reacting, you are actively helping to shape what comes next. If we remain silent, we risk leaving the narrative and the solutions in the hands of unseen forces. In this fragile era, collective awareness is as crucial as any technology or defense. Where are you following events from? Has your region felt the shock? What are your fears or hopes in this new era of uncertainty? The world as we knew it is shifting, and your voice could help expose the real scale of this turning point. As your testimonies and insights come together from every corner of the globe, one urgent question remains. How will nations, businesses, and ordinary people adapt when the old rules have vanished? The answers will define the next era, not just for those in power, but for each of us. The blackout may be the beginning of a new story, one that we must write together. As we face an uncertain future, our response will determine whether we merely survive or if we find new strength and resilience in the face of the unknown.